Committee on 14th of December 2022. We have apologies from Councillor Bradley, with Councillor Tony substituting. Councillor Brogan. No. Oh, thanks. I have Councillor Archie Buchanan present. Is Councillor Matthew Buchanan present? Councillor Kalikis? Oh, sorry. Councillor Kalikis is present, as is Councillor Convery. Councillor Cooper is present. Councillor Cowan. Councillor Devlin. Yes, it's online. Councillor Dewan is present. Councillor Fagan. Apologies, thank you. Councillor Faulkner. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson is present. Councillor Fulton is present. Councillor Gowan is present. Councillor Gray and Councillor Hamilton I have present, and Councillor Lambie. Councillor Lennon. Councillor Lockhart is present. Councillor Mars and Councillor McCallan. Councillor McCreary is present, and Councillor McCallan. Councillor Ray is present, and Councillor Shearer. Thank you. I'll pass you back to the Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 1, is there any declarations of interest? Nope. Margaret Cooper's asking to speak. Margaret?
Just to let you know I'm here, David.
Oh, I see, right. Thanks, Margaret. Okay, so there's no declarations of interest. Item 2 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll move that as a correct record.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is the revenue budget monitoring 22-23 housing and technical resources, excluding housing revenue account. And I'm going to ask Hazel Goodwin to take us through that. Hazel, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide information on actual expenditure measured against the revenue budget for the period 1st April 2022 to 4th November 2022 for housing and technical resources, excluding HRA. This is the third revenue budget monitoring report we've brought to the Housing and Technical Resources Committee for financial year 22-23. The report the report details the financial position in Appendix A, and there's also Appendices B and C, which detail the individual services within the resource. If I could take you to section 5.1 of the report and note that as at the 4th of November 2022, there is a break-even position against the phased budget. And then if I could refer members back to the recommendations at section 2 of the report, as at the break-even position as at the 4th of November and as detailed in Appendix A of the report be noted, and also if the proposed budget environments included in the report be approved. Thank you.
I'll move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Any questions? No, thank you very much. Item 4, revenue budget monitoring 22-23 housing and technical resources. This is the housing revenue account. Back to you again, Hazel, please.
Thanks again, Chair. The report also covers the same period, 1st of April 2022 to 4th of November 22, and this time for housing and technical resources, the housing revenue account. Again, this is the third revenue budget monitoring report we've presented to committee for the financial year 22-23, and the report has details of the financial position in Appendix A. And again, at section 5.1 of the report, we would note that as at 4th of November 2022, there is a break-even position against the phased budget. Again, if I could refer members back to section 2 of the report and ask that the break-even position on the housing revenue account budget be noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Is there any comments or questions? No. Item 5 on the agenda, capital budget monitoring 22-23, housing and technical resources, excluding housing revenue account. Lorraine O'Hagan, please.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Committee. This is the third Capital Budget Monitoring Report for the financial year 22-23 for the non-HRA capital programme, and again takes us to the spend position as at the 4th of November, which is accounting period 8. Section 3 of your report provides a background and advises that the budget report dated to the last Housing and Technical Resources Committee was 8.486 million, and there have been no adjustments to the budget since that last reported position. Section 5 then details the financial implications in terms of the capital programme. So we have the budget of 8.486 million, and in section 5.2 we note that the anticipated spend to the 4th of November was 1.045 million, and we had an actual spend of 924,000. So we were in a position of 121,000 behind profile, mainly reflecting the anticipated timing of spend on a number of multi-year and multi-project programmes, for example, Prioritise Urgent Investment and Principal Offices programmes, which are made up of a number of smaller projects. There's nothing particular to highlight to committee this morning, so if I can refer you back to the recommendations in section 2, and ask that the Housing and Technical Resources budget of 8.486 million and the spend to the 4th of November of 924,000 is noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Nope. Item 5 is the Capital Budget Monitoring 22-23 Housing and Technical Resources Housing Revenue Account, and that's back to Hazel again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, covering the period 1st of April 2022 to 4th of November 2022. This is the third capital monitoring report presented to committee for the current financial year. And this is the capital account for the housing revenue side. At section 5.1 of the report, we note that the housing capital programme for 22-23 totals 66.361 million. Details are included at Appendix A to the report. The actual expenditure to the 4th of November 2022 is 30.783 million, which is in line with what we expected. The resource will continue to monitor the spend on that report and provide further details to future meetings. Again, if I could refer you back to section 2 of the report, committee is asked to note the revised housing revenue account capital programme of 66.361 million and expenditure of 30.783 million be noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move that report. Remove that recommendation, sorry.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments? No, thank you. Item 7. Housing and Technical Resources Workforce Monitoring, and that's August and September 22. I'm going to ask Elaine Maxwell to take us through that. Elaine, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standard workforce monitoring report which is prepared by personnel, and the purpose of the report is to provide committee with an update on the employment information for the resource for the period of August and September 2022. Section 4.1 of the report details the absence figures for the resource, and as at September 22 the resource figure was 5.2%, and that does represent a decrease of 0.5% when we're comparing ourselves to the previous month. You will also note that the figure has decreased by 1.6% when we're comparing ourselves to September of last year. You will see that the September 22 figure for the resource is 0.2% lower than the council-wide figure. Looking at our absence figures at the month of September, as we always do, we project what the annual average for the resource will be for 22-23, and based on that, the figure has come out at 6.8%, and that is comparing to a council-wide average of 6% as a projection. Members will know that managers continue to follow the procedures outlined within our maximising attendance policy, and that's making sure that we're following the correct supports and actions to allow our employees to return to work. We continue to detail the COVID absences within the report, and you'll see at the time of the report being produced, the council absence levels were 6.12%, with 0.54% related to COVID absence. Section 4.2 of the report details the occupational health information, which can be found in Appendix 2, and you will see that there were 87 occupational health referrals made during that period. This does represent a decrease of 39 when we look at the same period of last year, but again, members will know that these figures can fluctuate depending on where our absence levels are sitting, and given that the absence levels have gone down, you would expect to see these referrals going down as well. Section 4.3 goes on to detail the accident and incidents, and there was 5 recorded within the resource for this period, and which is an increase of 3 when we look at the same period of last year. Section 4.4 details employee relations information. You'll see that there was no information to report for the period for the resource. Section 4.5 details the analysis of leavers, and that is detailed in Appendix 2, and you'll see that there were 11 leavers within the resource that were eligible for an exit interview, with 5 exit interviews being conducted. And again, just to remind members to know that the participation in the exit interview process is voluntary, but we do encourage our leavers to participate in that process. Section 4.7 of the report details that 24 employees within the resource left, and managers have indicated that all posts are being filled. Section 5 of the report details the staffing watch information, and you'll see that looking at our staffing watch information at September 22 and comparing that with June 22 figures, there's a slight decrease in the number of employees by 8 within the resource. And with that, I would refer committee back to section 2 within the report and ask committee to approve the recommendation to note the employment information for the resource for August and September 22. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. I'll move that recommendation. Is there any questions or comments?
I'll second it.
Kerry Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I would refer to page number 39. I found it actually very encouraging that the number of referrals for, sorry, but I actually found it here, to the employee counselling service had increased. I think that's very encouraging, where it seems to be that employees are seeking counselling at hopefully an early stage to keep them at work. As we know, it's been a very, very stressful time for a lot of employees, so it is very encouraging to see that those figures are increasing. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Item 8 on the agenda, acquisition of houses at former Phillips factory site, Wellhall Road, and it's a Section 75 planning reference PL21 1697, and I'm going to ask Annette Finnan to take us through that report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval to acquire 40 new build properties at the former Phillips factory site in Hamilton from the developer Lovell Homes. The development at Wellhall Road, Hamilton by Lovell Homes received planning consent in February of this year. Approval included an obligation for the provision of up to 40 affordable homes on site. Following discussions with Lovell Homes around a turnkey arrangement with the council, a proposal was assessed which would see 40 homes delivered. As noted in section 4, it's therefore proposed that the council acquire 40 completed properties subject to the principal conditions detailed. As noted at section 6, these properties, funded through a combination of Scottish grant funding and HRA capital investment and borrowing, will contribute to the target of 1,300 additional council homes. Other financial implications are noted at section 6.2 and 6.3. If I can take committee back to the recommendation on page 43, committee is asked to approve that the Executive Director of Housing and Technical Resources be authorised to acquire 40 completed affordable homes from Lovells for a total price not in excess of £7 million, which includes the land to fulfil the planning obligations associated with the residential development. And also the authority is granted to the Executive Director in conjunction with the Head of Administration and Legal to conclude the transaction in the appropriate manner and in the best interest of the Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Annette. Pleasure in recommending this, moving this recommendation.
I'll second it.
Is there any questions or comments? Julia Mars.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this report can only be welcomed, and the new build properties detailed in item 9 in our next item also to be welcomed. I'm wondering if a detail of the size of the properties and the types could be offered for items 8 and 9 when we get to it. And also, I'm mindful of whether we're building enough larger properties, 3 and 4 bed properties, knowing that families in that situation where they are in an insecure rent, landlords may be selling the property, and the cost of living crisis adding to that, find themselves in a difficult situation with our current numbers of building larger properties, facing either an overcrowding situation in a temporary accommodation or an infinite wait. So some detail on the type of houses that we're building and whether the dynamic situation that we're facing through the cost of living will perhaps add towards our intention to build larger properties.
Annette, would you like to respond to that, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor, for your question. In terms of the property types, I can provide this for this report and for the next one. This housing development we've been in discussion with Level Homes for a period of time, particularly to ensure we get the house type mix that we wanted to see. It will be a mix of family homes, including 3-bedroom houses, and some tenemental flats which will have wheelchair access on the ground floor, given this is an accessible site. So, and I can provide details for the next report. We are very conscious of the pressures for housing of all types, and as part of our planning process in terms of the types of property that will go on each housing site for the target of 1,300 properties, then we'll be taking full cognizance of the pressure for housing, the housing need and mix that's needed per site, and we bespoke it per site. So you will see family housing being a focus in the coming programme.
Thank you, Annette. Julia, does that answer your question? It seems like quite a nice broad mix there. Hopefully that meets to your satisfaction.
It does sound like a broad mix. I think I'm also mindful, and it's not absolutely relevant to this item, but for Clydesdale, the current 3 and 4 bed new build completions for 22-23 sits currently at 0. So I'm mindful for that going forward, that are we meeting the need? And are we moving dynamically to meet that need?
And we will remain mindful as well of that. Thank you very much, Julia. Anyone else? Andrea?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So yeah, just obviously welcoming the building of these new houses and in the next item. And I just wonder if in the future, instead of just saying 40 homes, we could maybe detail that in the papers so that the councillors know, without having to ask, sort of thing. But no, apart from that, I did have some questions which Annette and Stephen answered at our meeting the other day. And I'm glad to note as well that the council will have someone on site, a sort of project manager or site manager or clerk of works, whatever they're called, just keeping an eye on it so that the builders, get on with the council housing and they don't go away building the private stuff that they can sell quickly. So all my questions were answered. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 9, acquisition of houses at Brackenhill Farm. Section 75, planning reference PL 21-2093. Again, over to you, Annette.
Thank you, Chair. And I can provide the detail of the house mix at the end of the report, which in this instance is seeking to acquire 50 new build properties at Brackenhill Farm, Hamilton, from the developer Taylor Wimpey. The development of Brackenhill Farm, Hamilton by Taylor Wimpey Homes received planning consent in October of this year. Approval included obligation for the provision up to 50 affordable homes on site. Following discussion with Taylor Wimpey around a turnkey arrangement with the council, a proposal was assessed which would see 50 homes delivered. As noted in section 4, it's therefore proposed that the council acquire the 50 completed properties subject to the principal conditions detailed. And as noted at section 6, these properties again will be funded through a combination of Scottish grant funding and HRA capital investment and borrowing, which will contribute to the target of 1,300 additional homes, and the other financial implications are noted at section 6.2 and 6.3. The house mix at this particular site will see 34 houses of a range of 2, 3 and 4 bedrooms and 16 cottage flats, again for varying needs. The committee is asked to approve the recommendations that the Executive Director be authorised to acquire 50 completed affordable homes from Taylor Wimpey at a price not in excess of £8.545 million, which includes the cost of the land, to fulfil the planning obligation, and that the authority is granted to the Executive Director in conjunction with the Head of Administration and Legal Services to conclude the transaction in the appropriate manner and in the best interest of the Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Annette, and thank you for that additional information. So I'll move the recommendations.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? No one. Thanks very much. Item 10 on the agenda, policy and strategy review schedule, and I'm going to ask Cameron Mitchell to take us through that.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report, as detailed at section 1.1, is to seek approval for the Housing and Technical Resources Strategy and Policy Review Schedule. Section 3 of the report sets out the background, and at 3.1 notes that the schedule is reviewed and reported annually to Housing and Technical Resources Committee, with the last update provided on the 8th of December 2021. I'd highlight section 3.2, which notes the role that the Strategy and Policy Review Schedule plays in supporting the systematic service development and improvement, providing a clear time frame for the formal review of key housing policies and strategies, and thirdly, facilitating the development of the annual programme for customer involvement, which we do in conjunction with tenants groups. Section 4.1 of the report provides an outline of the content of the policy and strategy review schedule and its scope, which is attached to Appendix 1. The schedule itself sets out details of each housing policy and strategy, the frequency of review, and when the reviews are next scheduled to take place. Sections 4.3 and 4.4 in the report summarise the scope of the strategies and policies which are covered by the schedule. In terms of the next step, section 5.1 of the report notes the content of the schedule will as appropriate be reflected in the resource and service plans for 23-24 and will also be used to establish the joint programme for customer engagement. I'd highlight section 5.3, which confirms that the Housing and Technical Resources Committee will continue to be updated fully and separately in relation to the development of the specific policies and strategies contained within the schedule. Can I refer back to the recommendations detailed at 2.1 in the report, which are that committee is asked to approve the following. Firstly, that the policy and strategy review schedule attached to Appendix 1 be approved, and secondly, that the outcome of the policy and strategy reviews be reported to future committees in line with the schedule. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Cameron. I'll move that report, that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Is there any questions or comments? No, thank you very much. Item 12, 11, beg your pardon. Enhancement of the South Lanarkshire Council open market purchase scheme. Annette Finnan, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks committee approval to broaden the scope of the existing open market purchase scheme to enhance opportunities for the Council to increase its housing supply. The existing scheme was introduced back in 2015 and was subsequently amended in 2021. The scheme helps the Council to increase our overall stock of housing and to meet housing need. And since 2015, over 300 properties have been purchased by the Council via the scheme. The report details at section 3.3 the current criteria that must be met before a property will be considered, and seeks approval to be given to buy properties in 3 additional circumstances. These are, at section 4.3, approval is sought to acquire long-term empty properties which have been empty for 12 months or longer, in line with council tax classification. At section 4.4, approval is sought to acquire properties that are not advertised on the open market, allowing owners to engage direct with the council. And the third one, to allow engagement with private landlords of properties leased to the council where the owner or landlord no longer wishes to remain in the sector, to purchase vacant properties directly from them. In terms of next steps, subject to approval, it's proposed that the revised scheme be introduced with immediate effect. Any future proposals to further amend or develop the scheme will be brought back to Housing and Technical Resources Committee for approval. Supported by government funding from the Scottish Government, or grant funding from the Scottish Government, the open market purchase scheme represents value for money and will continue to do so. I take committee back to the recommendations. Committee is asked to approve that the additional criteria for the enhanced open market purchase scheme as detailed in section 4.3 and 4.4 be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Annette. I'll move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And I've got Andrea Cowan.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, it'll come as no surprise that I'm delighted to welcome this enhancement of what's now going to have to change its name from the open market purchase scheme, because it no longer the requirement to put your property onto the open market is no longer there. So this is fantastic news. It's something that I come across in my job, are issues selling to the council. So hopefully this will streamline things and make it easier for sellers. A couple of wee things on page 56. 4.4, just at bullet point 1, I didn't feel that it was actually crystal clear that it meant you didn't have to go onto the open market. But I'm assured that this will be made clear in any advertising of the scheme, so hopefully that will be the case. And delighted that we're going to look at the private landlords as well who are trying to get out of the sector. Although it's unfortunate that we can't buy the property with the sitting tenant, because in some ways we're making someone homeless so that we can buy a property. So I think maybe that's something that we need to maybe look at in the future, if there's a way around that. But overall, delighted. As you know, I was bringing this motion last week and withdrew it when I saw the paper. So, yeah, really pleased. And thanks to Annette and Cameron in particular for listening to me bang on about this for months and for getting it over the line. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, this is a welcome report, and I know that officials have been working on this for a good couple of years, long before you or I were even involved in housing. So thank you very much for your comments. Ross Lambie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm kind of looking at this from a slightly different perspective, and I'm just a little bit concerned that where the council becomes a more aggressive purchaser in the local housing market. And as we know from, all previous interventions in the housing market which bring additional capital to the market, they ultimately result in higher prices, whether it's the stamp duty relief for the first-time buyer, ISAs or Help to Buy schemes, all well-intentioned, but it's accepted by all people in the industry that it results in price rises. So I'm just a little bit concerned that perhaps there might be unintentional consequences of the council being a far more, present and potentially aggressive, inverted commas, purchaser in the market. And now the reason why I'm kind of raising it is because I had the misfortune of being in a Clyde Valley Housing Association meeting recently where we were discussing their 48 vacant properties that they have in Douglas and the various land banks that they're sitting on. And I just feel that there's some areas where we should really be looking to bring more housing to the market, because this is really kind of moving the stress from one part of the market to the other. And the ultimate way of relieving that stress is by creating more houses. And I wonder if there's anything the council can do to put more pressure on the housing associations, which are, like I said, they're sitting on 48 empty properties in a small village like Douglas, and land in Douglas as well. So I just wonder if, I guess my question really is this amendment to the policy about increasing flexibility, or is it about some kind of impending spending spree on property? Thanks.
What are you saying, Annette, have you got anything to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. I can add a couple of comments. I think the council has been very aware since 2015 that we were not in the business of inflating the market. We have been extremely prudent around the numbers and the properties that we have bought and the areas of housing pressure where we've operated. We have a target to buy 67 this year, which is not a significant number, but significant enough to help with the housing pressure in the area. And we have purchased 32 year to date. Last 2 years particularly, we've had real challenges around achieving the modest targets that we've had to purchase properties. And we have not achieved our target for the past 2 years, hence why we have brought forward today's proposal to broaden the criteria and widen the flexibility that we will be able to purchase ex-council properties in the main, bring them back into the council's ownership and then use them to enhance their supply of affordable housing and meet housing need. In terms of working with partners, and it's something we do every day, is work very closely with our RSL partners for those who are developing, and not all are or are able to ensure that where opportunities arise and they're included in the SHIP, they're included in the housing, affordable housing supply programme, and we'll continue to work with RSLs, including Clyde Valley Housing Association, to try and achieve that.
I'm listening to your comments and worry and your concern about stifling the market. To me, I see a slightly different angle. Maybe I'm missing something, but this would allow property owners to contact the council direct without having to have the property advertised. And that's a bit of a saving to the person who wants to sell a property, and it makes it more convenient, I think. That's where I see the benefit in that, I think. Annette can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if that conflicts with what you were suggesting yourself, Ross. Did you want to come back?
Yeah, of course, anything you do which enables a new purchaser to improve their purchasing ability in the market increases the market prices and the stress in the market. It was just a kind of broad point about it's moving the stress slightly from one side of the public sector into the private sector. That was all, and just an annoyance really at some of the housing associations sitting on large numbers of properties in rural areas where they really are in big demand. Thanks. I'm still in favour of the paper. Just I'll keep an eye on it. Really, thanks.
Thanks, Ross. Martin.
Yeah, Councillor Lambert, I think the concern that bringing more capital into the housing sector is just going to result in inflated prices. I think that's a reasonable concern, but I don't think it's really one that applies here. Ultimately, what would be happening when the council are buying up these properties is it would be moving properties that would otherwise be privately owned or privately let into the council sector and effectively removing them from the market. And if you think about the kind of aggregate effect that would have, it would mean that there would be, one fewer household seeking to rent these kind of properties privately, and would have the effect of kind of lowering the pressure on private rents or on private prices. I think that's an important distinction to other proposals that you mentioned there, just kind of enabling people to borrow more or to kind of flood the housing market with cheap capital. The other thing is this isn't really kind of indicative of an oncoming spending spree where the council's going to go and kind of buy up as many properties as possible. It's there to meet a specific need and to achieve kind of strategic aims. There are particular issues in a lot of tenemental flats or in a lot of flats where there's shared property where, although they were built by the council and they're kind of broadly understood to be council properties, the council's actually a minority owner, and being able to kind of strategically purchase properties when they become available in those situations allows the council to make improvements or make repairs that we otherwise would require to get the permission of kind of private landlords who are often not particularly keen to improve their properties. So it really would be a kind of targeted proposal, and it wouldn't have this impact of like driving up aggregate demand or kind of inflating house prices otherwise, because it would effectively allow the council to more efficiently kind of target specific situations where there's an acute need, where we can improve the situation of particular properties, and where we can satisfy this without kind of having to go and purchase land elsewhere or go through a much more expensive process of creating new builds.
Thanks, Martin. Julia.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if clarity, just following on from my colleague Councillor Cowan's question, that could clarity be offered around the use of the word vacant in terms of the property, and wondering whether any discretion could be offered in terms of where a property might be openly marketed and a sitting tenant being offered a notice to quit. So, and especially in situations where the council may very well have an interest in that property as meeting a specific housing need, it seems slightly pedantic to require a property to be empty for, before actually purchasing, only for that housing to be perfect for a tenant who may meet that specific need.
Annette, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. We had considered broadening the scheme further to include that option. However, in close discussions with Scottish Government's More Homes team, we're very clear we would not be eligible for grant funding where there's any sitting tenant, and therefore we've excluded that currently from the scheme. But as indicated earlier, if we are able to bring further proposals to broaden the scheme further back to committee, we'll do that, and that would be one that we may consider if the grant regime is to change. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So, no more questions. Okay, item 12 on the agenda, notification of use of Standing Order 37C, lease of 26 units within the former student residencies at 2 Barrack Street, Hamilton, for the purpose of accommodating Ukrainian refugees and resettlement. And I'm going to ask Annette again to deal with that one.
Thank you, Chair. This report advises committee on the use of Standing Order 37C, which was approved due to the timescales involved and the urgent requirement to enter into a lease agreement to provide accommodation for refugees at 2 Barrack Street, Hamilton. South Lanarkshire Council, along with other local authorities, plays a key role in delivering both the Homes for Ukraine scheme and the Scottish Super Sponsor scheme. We operate welcome hubs on behalf of the Scottish Government, providing temporary accommodation and supporting Ukrainians who have arrived in Scotland, and carry out safeguarding checks and assist with the matching of hosts. There is real pressure on accommodation, and a range of options are being considered across Scotland that might assist. The property at Barrack Street, formerly student accommodation, has been identified as being suitable for interim short-term accommodation before individuals move to more settled accommodation, with a capacity to accommodate between 150 to 200 Ukrainian refugees on the short-term basis. It's proposed that, fully funded by the Scottish Government funding in the Homes for Ukraine tariff grant, the Council leases and manages the property for up to 1 year. Council is asked to approve the recommendation on page 61 that the Executive Director is authorised to lease the subjects to Barrack Street, Hamilton, to meet the identified housing need of Ukrainian refugees be noted, and that the authority was granted to the Executive Director in conjunction with the Head of Administration and Legal Services to conclude matters, again be noted. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Annette. Happy to move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
And Andrea Cowan.
Thanks again. Again, really just to welcome this. I think it's a great improvement on the hotel hubs, in particular the Crotherland, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere in terms of public transport and the like. So it's good that we're moving people into somewhere that's so central for lots of access to shops and just day-to-day needs. I'm a wee bit disappointed that it's still going to be a sort of communal living situation with it's almost like 6-bedroom flats. So, 6 bedrooms with one kitchen facility. But I do appreciate that this is only temporary accommodation and that it's a stopgap for people and they'll be moved on. And I still think that's better than hotels. I see that there's an option to extend for another year as well, which again, I think is great, given that there's going to be quite a lot of expenditure getting it fit for purpose. So yeah, just really pleased to see this, and I know that all of the services that are available at the hotel, the employability services and everything will all be moved so that people have got services on site. So yeah, I think it's a great initiative, and just want to welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I think we would all agree that we'd like to give the best service we possibly could, but your comments right at the beginning suggest that what we are offering, what is on offer, is an improvement to what these poor people are currently experiencing. So thanks again for your comments. Anyone else? Thank you very much. Item 12 on the agenda, beg your pardon, item 13 on the agenda, disposal of Montrose House, Montrose Crescent, Hamilton, ML36LB. I'm going to ask Jerry McParland to deal with this one. Jerry?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise committee on the outcome of the marketing of Montrose House and seek authority to conclude the disposal on the terms outlined in section 4 of the report. Due to the introduction of more agile working patterns, the floor space requirement for the council was reduced and the office at Montrose House was declared surplus at the Exec Committee at its meeting on the 2nd of March 2022. And the property was subsequently marketed with a closing date of 8th of July, at which point one offer was received from AC Land Regeneration Limited for £205,000. Their initial intention is to use the property as a commercial rented opportunity while they're considering a range of redevelopment opportunities. The offer itself is only conditional on satisfactory title, which has been intimated in negotiations to be fine, and the sale will conclude on vacant possession being achieved by the relocation of the remaining staff from Montrose House. The sale of the property will generate a capital receipt of £205,000 as stated for the Council's General Services account and will also relieve the Council of operational running costs of around £400,000 per annum. I would therefore refer committee back to the recommendations contained in section 2 of the report and seek approval for the disposal on these terms and ask that the Exec Director of Housing and Tech, in conjunction with the Head of Administration, be authorised to conclude all the matters pertaining to the sale. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Happy to move that recommendation.
I'll second it.
Is there any questions or comments? Andrea Cowan?
Thanks, Chair. I've got to be honest. I'm really quite disappointed at the sale price for Montrose House, and I would really just like some background and some explanation around that. I wondered if there had been a professional valuation carried out prior to marketing and what that was, because you can't buy, we've been talking about housing, you can't buy a 3-bedroom detached house in Hamilton for £205,000. And this is a big office block with 76 car parking spaces in the centre of Hamilton. And I don't think this represents value for money for the council. I note that the missives haven't started yet, they haven't commenced, and so therefore it's not too late not to sell to this particular buyer. And I know there was a closing date for offers and only one offer was received, but you don't have to accept that offer. It could be remarketed perhaps in the new year. I just don't see the logic behind accepting this offer. I think it's far too low. And yes, I'd just like some explanation as to the thinking behind it. Thanks.
Well, I did ask the same question and I was given a satisfactory answer, and I'll ask Jerry to try the same with yourself.
Sorry, thank you. Thanks for your question. Yeah, I do understand the question, and certainly the sale price does seem low. However, I think it's indicative of market conditions, and particularly for that type of property and size of property in the Hamilton area. There isn't a generally buoyant office market, and the number of occupiers for that, as shown by the interest we got relating to the number of offers we got, is significant. I think fundamentally it's just the market conditions and the cost of taking on a building of that nature. The benefit to the council in excess of the capital receipt is obviously the loss of the ongoing running costs associated with the building, either vacant or full.
So we could hold out for a higher price, but it would be costing us money in the longer term. And one of the questions that I asked, if the land is going to be of value to someone, they have to clear it, and there's a very expensive demolition cost there for whoever wanted to do whatever they want to do with the land. Using it as office space, there just isn't that demand for that. Does that satisfy your question, Andrea?
No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Was it valued? What did you expect to sell it for? Because I'm interested in knowing how much below the anticipated value this offer is. And I appreciate that the commercial market is not buoyant, but but I still think that to take the first offer, which is so low, is not good sense. The other thing that I would say is I know that there's a £400,000 annual running cost, but these staff are being moved, so they could still be moved, and that running cost would be reduced substantially. The property's got, these staff have to be relocated, and so that can still go ahead. And as I say, the 400,000 is the running cost for a fully functioning office, but it could be reduced substantially. And I just, as I say, I just would like to know what the expectation was before marketing. And I don't think it was marketed for very long. I was just looking through the papers to see, how long it was marketed for. I just don't think we're getting the best bang for our buck, as somebody said yesterday in here. Thanks.
Well, what is the value? I mean, you work in that industry, maybe not so much in large business sectors, but you work in that industry. How would you put a value on that? Compared to what? If you think that value is low, it's low compared to what? What else in the vicinity has ever gone in sale that you could compare it against? And I don't think we do have that. Jerry, is there anything else you wanted to add in response to what Andrea has just said?
Just a couple of notes, thank you. We did have a relatively high level of interest in the property in terms of sending out particulars and people looking at it. We only had one repeated viewing of it. But what I would mention is that we didn't have an independent valuation done prior to it. We have an expectation of value, but it was quite low because the alternative use effectively is, as stated, constrained by development constraints. In terms of the marketing period, whilst it was marketed, I think, for 8 or 9 weeks, it's remained. We have deliberately left it with the advertising board on it and have had no further interest at all, and no follow-up interest in the property other than the only bidder. In terms of the operational costs, you're absolutely right. They could be reduced, the ongoing running costs, but we would have significant vacant property costs and a dilapidated building, which obviously would have no economic use.
Right, okay, I'll let you come back in once more.
Yeah. So, again, did you say there was a professional valuation carried out by a firm of commercial surveyors? No. So what was because that's how you would get the value, is to employ a commercial surveyor to value it. And so what was the expectation? Because this seems, as I said, incredibly low. And I'm just wondering how much lower than the council's expectation is this price?
There you go, Jerry.
Yep. We didn't have a set value prior to it because we don't generally have an independent valuation done. We have registered valuers, including myself, who would look at the property. The difficulty with this is that because of the nature of the property as an office, there is very little, if any, demand for it, as proven by the marketing exercise. And similarly, as a redevelopment opportunity, because of the development constraints and the tight size of the site, there wasn't a great expectation of capital receipt. The general drive behind this, as well as reducing our floor print, was to relieve ourselves of the ongoing operational costs.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry. Margaret Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Jerry, I think the answers you've given have been very informative. I'm actually for selling the property because we have a property up in Straven, the Ballgreen Hall, which has sat vacant for about 7 years now, and it hasn't been marketed, but it's empty, it's been broken into, it's a substantial building, and it's deteriorated significantly over that time to the point that it will need to be demolished. So I would rather have seen a speedy sale of that, where it could have been used for conversion purposes, rather than it sitting there all of that time, actually losing value. The market is difficult at the moment, and I think with the difficult budget situations we have facing us, we need to try to bring in our capital wherever we can with these older buildings that are actually costing us money. And I agree with you entirely about moving the staff across, but with what Andrea said, but you would still have to keep the building heated and watertight during any time that it's sitting, or it would finish up in the same state as the Ball Green Hall. A couple of kind of wee selfish points, David. One is that there's obviously a number of people that pay for car parking behind that building, and I just wondered what will happen to them, their car parking spaces. And secondly, I wondered if you had given any thought to where the council car will be parked that drives the provost around. It's parked in a garage over there, and I wondered what will happen once the building's handed over to someone else, where that's likely to go. So that was that. But I do welcome the report, and I think, Jerry, you've given very good answers, and I appreciate you getting into that in detail for us.
Jerry, I see you've indicated you want to come back.
Yes, thank you. No, just to clarify, we are making arrangements for alternative parking for both the councillors and the provost car.
Thanks very much. Matthew Buchanan.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to echo Andrea's comments. I'm not really satisfied with this. We're just after approving papers to buy houses for 175 grand a pop, and here we are looking at a paper to sell Montrose House for 205. And I appreciate what you're saying about redevelopment costs for anybody that might buy it, but that's not our problem. Our problem is to get value for money for the council, and I don't think this has it. Thanks.
I think the point has been made about value for money because there is ongoing running costs. You know, and Jerry, I'll ask Jerry to come back to this again, but, you know, just to reiterate, there isn't a market out there for that type of building. And I don't know if you've seen the building. It's not particularly well put together. It's two buildings that have been sort of joined together, and they're different levels, and it's not ideal. It's if you've been in it, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you go from one section of the building to the other section, there's ramps and there's different levels. It's like a modern and an old building that have been joined together. So it's not ideal. So I would say it's a very unattractive option for anyone interested in office space. The likelihood is that anybody that purchases that will demolish it and do something else with it. And when you're buying a piece of land that's got a considerable demolition cost attached to it, that reflects the price and what you're willing to pay for it, and we need to accept that as well. So I don't know if I've cut into Jerry's area there, but Jerry, I'll ask you to respond.
Yeah, thank you again. I accept the point that it's a low number. However, the value of any property is reflective of the use. In this case, it's an office use. There is very little demand for it, has been proven. The office market is satisfied by business parks, etc., and that type of office is now outdated. In terms of redevelopment, as was said by the Chair, the demolition and other title constraints wouldn't present an attractive site for the market, as we did direct market house builders, etc., and got very little interest in it because of the size and scale of the site. And the final point would be that the difficulty of not selling the property at the present time or remarketing it would be no guarantee of getting another offer, and the property could lie vacant and costly for a good number of years, which, as has been stated, would incur running costs, empty costs and a maintenance liability, as well as a degenerating building within the centre of Hamilton.
Thanks, Jerry. Martin?
Yeah, just, you know, I understand the point that Councillor Buchanan's making. You know, if you look at the houses we're buying versus the property that we're selling, but that is the definition of comparing apples to oranges. And like, this was an option that was explored whether or not the council could develop it into a residential opportunity. And because of the constraints, because of the cost of demolishing and then clearing the site and then building residential units from scratch, the costs that would be absorbed in that are so much that this does actually represent value for money. So while I understand looking at this and kind of comparing apples to oranges and saying we bought a house for X and we sold an office block for Y, it might not appear particularly attractive in a headline. I think it would be quite irresponsible for this committee to refuse to sell this, burden the council with hundreds of thousands of pounds a year of operation costs just to save our blushes for a very simplistic and shallow comparison between the purchase price of a new built property and the price of disposing of a soon-to-be dilapidated, surplus to use, complex to redevelop asset.
Thanks, Martin. Ross Lambie.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I guess the crux of the issue is that it feels like the committee doesn't feel like they've received enough due diligence on the issue, that we're not comfortable enough that the research was done prior to the acceptance of this offer, that this is a correct market value. And like, it does surprise me that there wasn't a valuation done by a surveyor prior to the building being marketed, and a £1 per square foot target done. That's like, I'm speaking as an architect who works in the commercial sector as well. I'm kind of surprised that hasn't happened, and I think it's that missing step that's causing all the unease. And to be frank, nobody on this meeting is an expert in it in terms of that, creating that value, and we're all kind of beating about the bush, giving opinions on whether you think it's worth it or not at that price. And we're never going to come to a resolution in that discussion because we're missing that comfort from the industry to tell us that this is an appropriate price. And I wonder whether we should be looking to postpone this decision until we can get more comfort. So just to finish, a quick question: what is the £1 per square foot sale price? What does it work out as? And just having a quick look, if you compare it to Maxim Park or Eurocentral at sort of £16 a square foot, I wonder how it looks. Thanks.
Before I ask Jerry, you mentioned there's no one in here with expertise, but I think Jerry just intimated earlier when he was speaking that is his background. So perhaps we could have hired someone and paid them money to give us something, give us an indication of a price that we have the expertise in-house that could already have given that. And I'm sorry if that's maybe overstating it a bit, Jerry, but you're nodding away, so maybe you're agreeing with me. I see that Joanne would like to come in. Joanne Forbes.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate the members' concerns about establishing a value in advance. As has been mentioned, we have our own in-house valuers, including Jerry. But at the end of the day, no matter what value we put on it, we can only achieve what the market is prepared to pay. We have, as has been mentioned, left the boards up and deliberately left open the opportunity for people to continue to ask about the property. No one has inquired about this property since we put up the boards, other than those that looked at it during the active marketing part. And we had lots of different companies that were initially interested. The team marketed to known developers, we marketed to known house buyers. So we haven't passively sat waiting to see if someone is going to come in. Lots of conversations took place in the very early stages, but when parties looked at the building and the site, no one converted that to an offer other than the one we have. It would be fair to say the officers are equally disappointed in the value, and in normal market circumstances would not be recommending something of this level to committee. However, in the current market, the likelihood is this building could lie empty for several years. We'd still have to pay the rates, the insurance and all the running costs of the building in that intervening period. So on balance, we're recommending this to committee. Do we feel this is a great market price? No, we don't. But in taking it in the round of the other risks associated with retaining the property, we feel this is the best option for the council. Thank you.
If I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. I was initially, in response to Andrea's first question, I was disappointed with the figure. But you have to. I'm accepting that we collectively have to be realistic. It's been on sale for a while, and that is the best. That's the only offer, I think, Jerry. Is that right? It's the only offer. So it's okay aspiring to have to get a really good price for the sale of the building or the land, but it's only a value to people who see it as a value, and they're only prepared to pay what they think is a value. And if there's no offers coming in, could we sit back for a year and see what we can get? I don't think so. I don't think that will transpire, and we'll have the ongoing running costs in between. So, David Shearer.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Yes. I'm sorry, I'm having some connection difficulties.
Can't see you, but we can hear you, but that's probably a bonus.
Right.
No offence.
Thank you,
Carry
Chair,
on, David,
for that.
carry on.
Having listened to yourself and the officers, I suspect that this building will not continue as office accommodation and is likely at some point in the future to be demolished and a residential unit built there. Is there any possibility, or has it been looked at, that in that instance, that's obviously going to be done for profit for any developer, that the council could get a share of that profit if we are selling so cheaply that in future we could get a clawback on some of that profit? Is that possible?
Put a condition on it, a clause, I don't know.
Yeah.
Joanne? Jerry?
Just let it go. It's again, Jerry.
It's the wrong Jerry you've brought in. Sorry about that. Jerry,
Thank you. Sorry. In normal circumstances, if we were selling subject to a planning application and there was a development constraint on it, we could put a clawback. In this instance, the offer is unconditional and the proposed use isn't subject to planning consent. So there is an alternative use which is hiding behind the offer. We did look at it ourselves for a potential housing development. However, it was considered, given the development constraints and the size of the site, to be financially unviable.
Thank you, Jerry. So it was, well, Jerry Convery was next, remember? Jerry, bring in Jerry Convery. Jerry?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief. At the end of the day, we've listened to the professionals, i.e. the officers. I hear what some of my colleagues are saying. The things I warn, it's a building that's needing demolished. Nobody's going to use that building for anything. It's no office space. I mean, I've been in it a million times. And at the end of the day, it's only what people are going to be prepared to pay. And Martin made the point. We're talking about houses in one hand, we're talking about that monstrosity across the road in another hand. It's no like for like. And at the end of the day, it's not just the 400,000, it's 650,000 in totality. What happens if we leave it lying, as Margaret Cooper said about the Ballgreen Hall, and somebody vandalises it and sets it on fire? We'll have other added costs. So we've been out to the market. The market are not interested. That's the bottom line. And as far as I can see, we're not going to get any better. It's going to get worse and worse. And heating costs are going through the roof, and we'll still need to heat the building, or else, if we don't heat it, the place will flood, and all of a sudden we'll have more costs to the council. So I would move, Chair, that we just accept the report and move on.
Thanks, Jerry. I've got Lindsay Hamilton. I'll bring Lindsay in.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose the concern is, as well, is that we've only had one person interested in this, and then how long will they stick around if we don't move this past this today? It could end up that they think, well, this isn't worth it, and it's no worth the money. So I understand what people are saying, but it is a saving to the council overall, and so I would agree that we should just move the paper today and go ahead with it.
Thanks, Lindsay. Ross Lambie.
Thanks, Chair. A few people have asked, but I don't think the answer came out. There was an internal valuation, it sounds like. What was it? And what does that work out per square foot? Thanks.
Okay, Jerry.
Thank you. We didn't have an internal valuation in terms of a redevelopment. There was an asset valuation for it as an office, and I think the rate per square foot was £7 a square foot used at the time. However, as Joanne has pointed out, that is only an aspiration, that's only an asset valuation and doesn't reflect the market value of it, because the market value is dependent on what someone will use it for. In terms of an office use, it's considered the life of it, or the future span, certainly from our perspective, was over.
Okay, I feel as this is going on a wee bit, so I'm going to ask Andrea and Margaret Cooper, and I'm going to bring it to a head following these next two. Andrea?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Joanne, thank you. That was helpful. And my questions are no criticism of the officers. Jerry, please, be assured of that. I just feel that, as Ross Lambie said, we don't really have enough information, I think, or we didn't have, the information's coming out now. When I read the paper, I didn't sense any disappointment in the price, and perhaps if that had been relayed in the paper, that unfortunately this is the best price we got, and if it had been put in those terms, that might have been helpful, because I just thought this is not a good deal. Why are we excited about this? So I think, having heard Joanne's explanation that you guys are disappointed as well, I think that's very helpful. I understand it's got to be sold. I mean, I appreciate that, and I know full well that anything that you're selling is only worth what someone will pay for it. I know all of that. I just feel that it would have been helpful if it had been put forward to us in the terms that Joanne used at the end there, and that, it was disappointing. And if we had known, I don't know what you were expecting, if you had been expecting £500,000, I mean, I'm picking that out of thin air, and you said, but unfortunately this is the best the market has come forward with, then I think that would have put a different slant on the paper. So thank you all very much. Can I also say as well that we need a break for the interpreter? It's 11:10. Thanks.
I'm mindful of that, Margaret. So could Margaret Cooper, if you're brief enough, we could move this item on and take the break.
Yes, I don't agree with what Andrea's saying. I don't think we present committee reports in a negative fashion. We try to present them in a straightforward, informative model. And there's an opportunity to speak to officers prior to this meeting to seek out additional questions, Chair, and obviously no one did that, or we wouldn't have had this length of debate. I want to second the move that Jerry Convery and Lindsay Hamilton suggested, that we move the paper and we go on to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Margaret. I think I already moved and it was seconded right at the start. So, yeah, that has been covered. So, if there's any other, if there's an alternative motion, I'm happy to hear it. But if not, we can take the item as agreed. Ross, do you want to make an alternative motion or amendment?
Yeah, I just I think officers need to put themselves in our position as committee members.
Ross, I need to stop you. I said that I was not taking any more questions, but if you want to
I'm
make
going
a
to
motion,
make a motion,
if you
Chair,
want to make an amendment, you want to make an amendment? No.
Yeah, an amendment. Sorry. So I think officers need to put themselves in the committee's position that we're being asked to sell off. We're the ones responsible. We're signing off this sale, which, as you can tell, there's a great deal of discomfort at the price of it. There's a bit of discomfort about the lack of prior valuation, either internally. It was confirmed that there was no internal valuation, or by a surveyor, third party. There was also concerns raised that the marketing was pretty short.
I'm sorry, Ross. I'm
So
sorry.
I'd
I'm
like
going to have to intervene.
Can I not?
No, hold it. I think you'll find I'm chairing this meeting.
I'm explaining the basis for my amendment, so you have to hear it in order, because it has to be recorded in.
Ross, if you want to make an amendment, you're welcome to do that, but I'm not going to have the preamble because I've already had that. There's been enough comments. If you want to make an amendment, please do so. If you want to come back in and do that, I'll invite you in.
Yeah, of course, I'd like to make an amendment, Chair. I don't quite understand why you're overstepping the mark.
I'm not overstepping the mark. We're 10 minutes past 11. We're supposed to have a break, and I said after Andrea and Margaret, I wasn't taking any more speakers. But if you want to make a motion, please make it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to make the amendment that we delay this just until we get more robust background marketing information.
Okay, is there a seconder? No seconder. Thank you very much. We're now going to adjourn for 5 minutes to give the interpreters a break. See you back here at 15. We'll make it 20 past 11:20. Thanks very much. Okay, everyone, thank you for your patience. It's now 20 past. I have a comment to make, and it's an apology, actually, to Councillor Ferguson. I've just been informed after making the comment that we'll break for the interpreters, but it's not actually the interpreters. They actually don't need a break. It's the user, it's Councillor Ferguson, who needs an eye break for looking at the screen, and it never occurred to me. I don't think it's occurred to anyone, but it's now the case. So whenever we're at any committees or council meetings, when we take a break, it's for Councillor Ferguson's benefit, because his eyes are strained watching the screen, because he has to watch the screen to, in effect, hear every word, where we can hear and don't need to look at the screen constantly. So apologies, Councillor Ferguson, for that. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen again, and hopefully that will be communicated to anybody who's chairing meetings in the future. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 14. It's disposal of a vacant domestic dwelling house at 49 Nevis Avenue in Hamilton. I'm going to ask Jerry McParlin to take us through that report. Jerry?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to declare the vacant property at 49 Nevis Avenue surplus to operation requirements of housing services and progress its disposal. The property was acquired back in 2000 and was initially purchased by the Council to be used as temporary homeless accommodation to meet demand and requirements for the service at that time. It hasn't been used for that purpose for a good number of years and has been put into the mainstream housing let pool. It's now vacant and it's considered appropriate now, as it's not within a normal managed housing area, to declare the property surplus. It's not required for homelessness, and it's now not in an area we have any other stock, and therefore it's not within our normal investment portfolio for management or investment. And therefore I would refer committee back to paragraph or section 2 of the report, recommending the property is declared surplus and the Executive Director of Housing and Tech is authorised to progress the disposal and mark it in the normal surplus property manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. So I'll move that recommendation.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Item 15 on the agenda is Stonefield Pitches, Blantyre, and it's an asset transfer to Blantyre Victoria Youth Football Club. Joanne Forbes, please to take us to that report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise committee of a community asset transfer request by Blantyre Victoria Youth Football Team. The request is for a lease of pitches known as Stonefield Pitches in Blantyre. The request was validated on the 11th of May 2022, and the subsequent consultation, which closed on the 24th of June, generated 58 responses. 52 of those responses were positive, 1 was neutral and 5 were negative. And the negative responses highlighted the reduced access to the area by the local community and for dog walkers. The Asset Transfer Assessment Panel has considered the request, and the results of that assessment are set out in sections 3.6, 3.7 and 3.8 of the report. However, in summary, if these pitches were fully let, then an income of £13,300 could be generated by South Lanarkshire Leisure and Cultural Trust, who manage the pitches under the lease. The costs of maintaining the land, which are met by the council, are £11,400 per annum. Blantyre Victoria Youth Football Club are currently the principal users of the pitches, and they have confirmed that they will make them available for booking by other clubs. The organisation meets the legislative criteria for asset transfer, and the proposed lease will enable the club to increase their membership and their activities. Blantyre Victoria Youth Football Club will make use of the facilities and equipment at the nearby Blantyre Victoria Junior Stadium to support their use of the pitches, and have not asked for the pavilion to be included in the asset transfer request at this stage. The community benefits in terms of health, wellbeing, education and recreation suggest that a 93% discount to market value should apply. However, the council's other unlicensed pitch leases are already at nominal rents, and therefore the request that the rent is £1 per annum is in line with our arrangements elsewhere. There is a net loss between the council and the trust of 1,900, potentially between the possible income and the operating costs. However, the risks associated with the asset transfer are considered low, considering that the proposal is simply for a year-to-year lease and there's no development on the site proposed. And therefore, I would recommend to the committee that the grant of the one-year lease on the terms and conditions set out in section 5 of the report are approved, but would ask that you note that any annual renewal of that lease will be conditional on a ground inspection being carried out by Land Services to ensure the area is being maintained, and by evidence from the football club that they are delivering the wider community benefits. This proposal enables the club to demonstrate their capacity and their ability to manage an asset, and whilst it does have implications in terms of what access there is to pitches to other clubs, the club has provided an assurance that they will still allow bookings for use of the pitch. I would therefore refer the committee back to section 2 of the report and recommend the annual lease on the terms set out in section 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. I'll move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Is there any questions or comments? No. Item 16 for noting. Update of the Housing and Technical Resources Risk Register and Risk Control Plan. Cameron Mitchell, please. Good. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Who's going to speak to him? Sorry. I beg your pardon. Stephen, are you going to, on my notes here, it's Cameron. Stephen, are you going to take us through that report? Sorry? Yeah, it's only for... Yeah, okay. It's for noting. I mean, if everybody's happy with it, it's a noting item anyway, so I'm happy just to move on if members are satisfied with that. Okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much. So, item 17, in fact, all of the remaining items are for noting, so I would move that we take all these on block unless anyone has got any questions or comments to any of the noting items. Can we agree that, committee, or is anyone otherwise minded?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for your attendance. Take this opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you very much.